All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to the Stanton Homekey Development Virtual Meeting. My name is Kelsey Brewer, Communications and Policy Manager for Jamboree, and I'm going to be serving as your moderator and technical assistance for tonight's meeting. I've already dropped a message into the chat. You can access your chat by wiggling your mouse over the bottom of your screen, and you'll see lots of different options pop up. Feel free to use that chat throughout the meeting to ask questions or ask for help. When you came into the meeting, you came in muted. There will be an opportunity for you to speak, but that we ask that during the actual presentation today that you keep your microphone muted. You do have the ability to enable or disable your camera on your own, so we would love to see your faces if you want to. And I just also want to note that this meeting is being recorded. As I mentioned, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the chat box throughout. And if you are on the phone, we will unmute you during the Q&A so that you can ask any questions that you have. That covers all of the technical pieces. So without further ado, I will turn it over to our Jamboree presenters today, Danielle and Vicki, to tell you more about this future community. Danielle?
Thanks, Kelsey. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for joining us in this virtual room this evening. We're here to talk about our Stanton Homekey development, which is the conversion of the Tahiti Motel and Stanton Inn into 132 affordable apartment homes. This is going to create homes for 132 individuals. This is not a shelter. I'm Danielle Lettieri, our Director of Supportive Services, and my co-presenter is Vicki Rodriguez, our Senior Director of Development. First, I'm going to give you a little background about Jamboree. We're a nonprofit affordable housing developer. We've been in the business for over 30 years. We're located here in Orange County. Our corporate office is in Irvine. We have just opened up another corporate office up in Sacramento about a year and a half ago. However, a majority of our staff remains here in Orange County. Our mission is to deliver high quality, affordable housing and services that transform lives and strengthen communities. Our vision is that every person will live in a strong, healthy, sustainable community. And these are more than just words to us here at Jamboree. You really see this vision and commitment in every department. You see it in our development team. You see it in the interiors and exteriors of our building. It goes into everything we do. You see it in our commitment to our local partners and our local community members. You see it in our attention to detail for our resident services, making sure that they have all the support that they need on site. And you see it in our approach to asset management and long-term ownership. We're an owner for at least 55 years, and so we're going to be a partner in the community, and we want to make sure that we're a good partner. We're across the state of California. We are the largest nonprofit affordable housing developer here. We have 93 properties, about 9,000 units, housing over 18,800 Californians that get to call Jamboree home. We're excited that we're going to have about 132 new residents calling Jamboree home. We serve different populations. We serve families, seniors, special needs, homeless, and veterans. You might be asking yourself now, what is supportive housing? We really believe that supportive housing is the answer to the housing crisis and the crisis of individuals experiencing homelessness. I'm sure everyone in this room has seen homelessness increase, especially here in Orange County, across the state of California, and nationally. And we really believe that providing affordable housing is the answer. But it's not just that affordable housing, it's really taking affordable housing with the supportive wraparound services. You can't have one without the other to make this work. It's really combining these two. So we take our high quality affordable housing with population specific services to make sure that our individuals and families can be stabilized. And I'll get into more detail of what specific supportive services are and what we're going to offer at this project. But a broad overview of supportive services, it's really wraparound services that are going to provide support to our residents to make sure that they can live stably. So this might be case management services, health and wellness services, clinical services, some skill building, and social and recreational activities. There's a lot of research out there that I'm not going to bore everyone with and get into the nitty-gritty details, but research points that this is a solution, especially for the chronically homeless individuals experiencing homelessness or individuals with special needs or disability. So all the research shows that this works, and this is the answer. So Jamboree has done this across the state. We have a myriad of different models. We have been successful in these models across the state, all the way, we're building in San Diego up to Sacramento, and we believe we can successfully implement this here in Milpitas, especially with our home base being here in Irvine. You might be asking, what does it look like? I think most of us, when we think supportive housing, at least myself, I grew up outside of LA. I think of the row after row of cookie cutter. They all look the same. There's trash. It's fenced in, barbed wire, maybe broken down cars there. I think that is what most of us think when we think of homeless housing. However, as you can see the pictures below, that's definitely not the case. Jamboree delivers high quality. We look just like market rate. We want to come into a community and make it look better. And so we really do have models and experience in this, as you can see. Now I'm going to pass it over to Vicki to go a little bit more in detail of the specific project.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Danielle. So to start, I will kind of walk you through our two proposed developments in the city of Stanton. We have been working very closely with our city and county partners on the conversion of the two motels that we're going to talk about tonight. So to start, first to orient you, there are two proposed Homekey developments. One is the Stanton Inn Suites, which is located on Catella Avenue, roughly between Western and Knott, and was a motel that currently has 72 units and has been operating as a motel up until recently. I believe it was built in 1989, so it's relatively newer development. And then the second motel is Tahiti Motel on Beach Boulevard. That's between Orangewood and Chapman. So wanted to kind of walk you through the proposed improvements to the developments. As Danielle mentioned, we'll be acquiring the two developments and then working on a process to convert the current space that's there to provide community space for all the supportive services that Danielle will talk a little bit about later. The improvements for both of developments will largely entail addressing any life safety issues, providing accessible units for any residents that might need them. So from a resident perspective on the outside, the major improvements will be happening within the units themselves. I think the most visible improvements that we're proposing is installing a security gate for both developments. And as we transition the use from a motel to housing, we will ensure that there will be live-in staff, an on-site property manager and maintenance person that will live at the development at each unit, at each property. So there are two staff members that will be there on site at all times, 24/7. If we can move on to the next slide, Danielle. Look, just to kind of walk you through the schedule and the proposed schedule, we've been working to acquire the property and are targeting the end of this month to acquire both properties. And immediately after that, as I mentioned, we'll start the improvements to turn these units into housing, to residential units, to address any life safety items, like I mentioned, provide a security gate, convert the community space. All of that is anticipated to start in December and will take roughly 90 days or so to complete the improvements and have residents move in after that time period. That's for the Tahiti Motel. We can move on to the next slide. For Stanton Inn Suites, as I mentioned, so Stanton Inn Suites is roughly on the same closing schedule as Tahiti. The only difference there is that we already have folks who were operating under the room key program, which is also was targeting the same population that we're targeting now, which is homeless individuals who have been impacted by COVID. So the improvements, the residents will stay in place as we work through any life safety improvements. There are a handful of units that will need to be relocated either offsite or within the property as we work within units. The rehab improvements will start in December and will complete in March as well. I think that's it. I'll turn it back over to Danielle.
Perfect, thanks, Vicki. So I'm going to get a little bit more into the operations and the specific services that will be happening at this site. So really, what Jamboree comes in and offers for this, we are a long-term owner, as I said, for at least 55 years. We'll be here in the community. And we have over 30 years of experience, and we've found an effective solution of how to manage sites like this. And really what we found, our secret sauce or the secret ingredient for the recipe, is really our oversight and coordination. We take our asset management company, who is the department that oversees the physical plant of the project and the finances of the project to make sure it's up to standard, with our supportive services on-site team, and then our third-party asset management or property management team. Excuse me, I'm getting tongue twisted. So it's these three teams working together to make sure that we're effectively managing and have oversight. So this looks like consistent monitoring. We have outcome measures that our site has to meet, and we base these outcome measures off of other communities like this within the state of California and across the nation, making sure that we're hitting the same benchmarks that are expected. And then we're doing this with inspections. So our corporate team goes out multiple times a year to inspect the site to make sure it is living up to the standards that we expect it to. And then we do have a myriad of meetings that I'm not going to get into and bore everyone like our research, but there are multiple meetings to make sure that we're all in communication and know what's happening. We're not like some owners that just want a once a year report to make sure we're in the green financially. We want to know what's happening in the day-to-day of these sites, and we get that with our asset management team, supportive services team, and property management, always in communication to know exactly what's happening on site. And so in addition to this oversight and coordination, we provide a supportive services plan that's specifically designed for the residents moving in. We don't have a cookie cutter approach of slapping on certain services. We really look at who's moving into the site and make sure that our supportive services plan meets their needs. And we do this by an assessment when everyone moves in to identify what they're going through, where they're coming from. We do a needs questionnaire to get the resident buy-in and what their input is of what they like to see happening on site. We look at the design and location, as Vicki talked about. We create the community space, so we really look at how much space do we have, indoor, outdoor, what can we provide for our folks on site. And then we look at our surrounding community of what agencies can we partner with, what's nearby that we can partner with. This all goes into the plan to make sure our residents' needs are being met and that we're able to effectively manage a site. Next, the providers that will be on site here at these two properties are going to be the County of Orange Services Team, Jamboree Services Team, and American Family Housing, another nonprofit here in Orange County that provides housing and services. So these three teams will work together to make sure all of our resident needs are met. And we really do this through referrals to our residents to different programs and resources to make sure that they can meet their goals. We coordinate social and community building activities. We work with third-party partners to come on and bring educational resources. We do health and wellness groups. So it's really making sure that whatever we see the need for our residents, these three parties are going to work together as a team to make sure those needs are met. That might be clinical services from the county. That might be working with an outside partner to come in and bring a GED class for our folks, cooking classes, you name it. We want to make sure that our residents' needs are getting met right there on site. And our overall goal is that residents stay housed and have an affordable, safe place to live where they can work on themselves and get where they want to be. And at this site, at any given time, there's going to be about 10 services staff, and especially at the beginning. So there's going to be plenty of support for these residents amongst the two locations. Security is a big topic that we typically get asked about at these sites. As Vicki said, we're going to be putting a gate for both of these sites. So we'll have controlled access for entry and exit. And then we do put security cameras inside and outside. We want to know who's coming on our site. We want to know who's leaving our site. We want to make sure that we can effectively monitor that. We do have visitation protocols for non-residents. I think a lot of folks think you're building this and everyone's going to bring their friends in and move them in. That is definitely not the case. There are very specific criteria for becoming a resident and very specific rules for visitation and how long individuals can visit. So that is all in place. And there are no drop-in services here. So I think a lot of folks will get it confused sometimes with the homeless shelter where there's the long lines out front, people waiting in to come take a shower or get their meal met, and then they hang out outside and go out into the community. Our services are specifically for the folks living on site. And like I said, there's a very specific resident process that I'll talk about in a little bit. And then as Vicki mentioned, we do have our professional property management company. and we're going to have them on site living there, so there is 24/7 coverage. Next, I did talk about we're that long-term owner. We're going to be in the neighborhood. It's part of our mission statement to strengthen communities. We want to be a good partner. We want to be a good neighbor. So we do use the coordinated entry system, which is the County of Orange system, that any individual that's experiencing homelessness who wants housing is placed onto this coordinated entry list. So we want to make sure that we're getting individuals from the countywide intake process so we can match an individual to the specific housing need that they may have. And then there is going to be preferencing. So there's a preference for any individual that's living in Stanton for this site. So an individual experiencing homelessness that's been affected by the COVID in Stanton will take first priority for this site. And then we do have lease policies. So everyone that's coming in has to follow some sort of house rules. There's rules and responsibilities that they must follow. And so we do background checks when they're coming in. They sign these documentations that they understand the house rules. And then we make sure that we work with them. And this is when the supportive housing comes in. They have these rules. We work with the management team. We work with the supportive services team to help mitigate any behavior if someone breaks these rules. For example, if someone's playing music loud and after the quiet hours, because that's part of the house rules, they have to be quiet at a certain hour. Someone's breaking that, they get reported on. The property manager and the services team are going to meet with that individual together to talk to them about how they broke the rule and think of solutions so that doesn't happen again. The supportive services team might talk about getting headphones at night, lowering the volume, whatever that might look like. And we'd use that same process for whatever rule is being broken. So we want to make sure that we're working with these clients to mitigate any behaviors. However, if they continue to break this lease or if it's a safety concern, these individuals will be exited from the program. And if someone does get exited from housing, we work on finding them a new housing. There's an exit plan. It's not just putting them out our front door, putting them out the gate and letting them walk down with all their belongings. We want to make sure that someone has an exit plan and they get out somewhere. So again, it's all about being that good neighbor. It's all about making sure we're keeping our residents safe, keeping our community safe. And we do have that on-site services team, the on-site management team that's there to talk to the community. We want to hear from you. We want to know what's going on. If you see something, let us know. We have a lot of communities will have come and volunteer at one of our sites or try to donate to our sites. So we're always there to talk to anyone in the community, whether it be good or bad. With that, we're going to move on to questions, and Kelsey's going to take it from here.
So Danielle, the first set of questions I think you're going to go through, they were questions submitted via the website.
Perfect, cool. Thank you. The first question, is supportive housing unsafe and will it burden our police department? That is a great question. We get it a lot. But people living in supportive housing are less likely to burden the police and other public resources than those who are unhoused. And there's a lot of research out there to support this. And really, it's one of our outcome measures that we're looking at is someone, once they're in housing, are they reducing their usage of these emergency services? And the way we do that is we have the supportive services team on site to work and intervene with these individuals. So they do have 24/7 coverage, support lines to talk to them if what's going on. So it's not, when someone's on the street, the first call to the cops or the first call is the paramedic, or if they're getting medical treatment, they're going to the ER. They're not going to a primary care doctor. So that's what the supportive services team is there for, to talk to these individuals, get them connected to where they need to go and who to call for the appropriate timing. Because there's always a time and place to call 911, but it's not for everything. So we definitely see a reduction. Next, does supportive housing lower property values? Definitely get that question a lot. There was a study released by NYU's Furman Center in 2008 that found supportive housing does not have a negative impact on nearby property values. In fact, it showed that 5 years after supportive development opened, nearby property values tend to have risen more than similar areas with no such facility. And with Jamboree, we see this in our communities. This is anecdotal, obviously, but when we do come into a community, we want to make sure that it's a showpiece. And as you've seen the design of our building, so it is all about coming into communities, bringing up the community, and making sure that we're a good partner. I think you're on mute.
Danielle.
You're welcome.
So So the next section, if you, we're going to go to our questions that were submitted via the chat. So I've got a few here, 2 of which are going to go to Danielle, but first I'm going to go to Vicki because I think that this is probably an important question for us to clear up. Generally speaking, Vicki, what this person wants to understand is kind of what the timeline process has been. Is the development already approved? Maybe you can speak a little bit more about how Project Homekey came to be and the process in which we went through.
Sure. So the Homekey program was established via a notice for funding availability in July. At that time, Jamboree and the County of Orange and the city worked very closely together to see and identify, because of the county and the city's commitment to providing housing solutions for homeless individuals, we worked together to identify 2 potential locations that might be a good fit for this funding program through the state. We, of course, have worked very closely with the city and have been in contact with the county, and both the city and the county together, going through a process of requesting funding from both groups and through the typical process that you would undergo, whether you're building supportive housing or whether you're just proposing a residential development. So we are submitting plans to the city for all the proposed improvements and having them review and approve for compliance of those plans and our proposed rehab plans for both developments. And we have gone to City Council, but we'll be going back to City Council for the final approval of the development funding agreements.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Vicki. The only other thing that I would just note, as Vicki mentioned, the Homekey project is a state project. There was a question in the chat about whether or not this project is supported using state monies. So this maybe isn't the question this person is asking, but I'm going to expand it a little bit further. While this project does use Homekey funding, can you talk a little bit more about, is this going to be something that we come back to the City of Stanton in 10 years and say, oh, we need another $5 million, is oftentimes things that we hear from the community.
Right. No, I think that's why we've been working very closely with the city and the county from the outset to ensure that we're providing a budget that will fit within the parameters of the state funding program and within the funding that's available from the city and county. So no, that is not our plan to come back to the city or the county and request additional funding.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Vicki. Danielle, I'm going to transition over to you. So the first question that we have dealing kind of with the services and ongoing operations is, generally speaking, across our portfolio, what is our occupancy rate? And the reason the person wants to know this kind of data point is because, there's often this conception that homeless people refuse housing. And I just am curious, with your expertise, what your experience with that has been.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. 92% of our residents remain housed. That is our rate for staying housed for our residents coming out of homelessness. However, we are always 100% full. There are times the time in between that we may not have someone in a unit is to turn the unit. So making sure that the carpet's clean, repainted, all of that. So anything to turn the unit, and then just processing applications. Here in Orange County, as I said, we use the coordinated entry system. So if anyone on that list has expressed wanting to be housed. So if someone experiencing homelessness does not want to be housed, they're not going to be placed on that list. And that list is thousands of people long. So we have constantly another resident to come in and take the place. And when we've offered housing to someone on that list, when their name comes up, because it can be a really long line on there, it's a long time for their name to be called, we've never had anyone say, nope, don't want that housing. So we are constantly 100% filled. When we're not 100%, it's truly turning a unit or processing application paperwork.
Thanks so much, Danielle. So another kind of follow-up questions on the operations side is, is there a time limit to how long a person can use this type of supportive housing? And can you maybe expand upon why the critical difference of the lack of time limits is so critical to why supportive housing is a successful model for addressing homelessness?
Yeah, definitely. So the housing is definitely the model. And it's getting individuals into housing without that end date. Because what all the research has shown is transitional housing, shelter housing is not the answer, because when an individual is in there, they always know there's an end date. So it's not permanent. They can't, when someone's experiencing homelessness, you're traditionally thinking about, where am I going to get food? How am I going to get clean? How am I going to try to get a job when I don't have a place to like brush my teeth and print out my resume, etc. So it's getting someone into housing that doesn't have this cutoff date, that a lot of the other short-term housing programs kick them out during the day. They can't stay there 24/7. So it's getting in housing and then being able to work on everything is what makes this so effective, because you can't be working on your deeper issues or getting a job when you're homeless, or when you're like, I'm only in here for 3 months and then I got to be out. Because yeah, you might get a primary care physician, you might get a job nearby, and then 3 months you're back on the streets and you might end up in another city. So here we do not have a cutoff for time limit. So if an individual needs supportive housing, they can stay in supportive housing as long as they're following the house rules of what they need to abide by in that housing. So it is permanent for them.
Thanks so much, Danielle.
Of course.
So that wraps up the questions that we have received via the chat and via the website. So now we're going to go to the part of the community meeting that we always look forward to, which is hearing directly from community members on the call. So how this section of the community meeting is going to work is, in the middle of your kind of toolbar on Zoom, you should see an option that says participants. When you click on that, you'll see your own name. And if you right click or click more, it gives you the option of saying, let me raise my hand. And that's how we're going to go for this first part, is based on the first come, first serve basis of whoever raises their hand first, that's who I'll unmute. If we are unable to get that to work, what we'll do next is I'll come through and just unmute everybody on the call, so everybody has an opportunity to speak. If you don't have any questions, that's totally fine. Just let us know you don't have a question and we'll move on to the next person. So I'll go ahead and be quiet and see if any of the folks on the call want to raise their hand to ask any live questions first. Patricia, perfect. So Patricia, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself here. There we go. We should be able to hear you now.
I just wondered, were any other cities considered for this program?
Sure. Vicki, do you want to maybe take the first stab at that, and then?
Sure. So we did reach out to other cities, but given the framework of the Homekey program, the funding is allocated by region, so there are limited resources. So given the funding that was available for the Homekey program, realistically, the funding that would be available would only be for 2 to 3 projects. Our region is Southern California, which covered several counties, but we worked closely with the City of Stanton and the county, and identified the City of Stanton as an area that would be a great location for this type of use, given that they had already been working through the Homekey program with the state of California to provide the housing that is targeting this population.
I just know that the housing that Stanton Inn has now for the COVID, that they were going to have something in Laguna, but those people protested, and then it came to Stanton.
Right, and it's been operating, I believe, since the county has been renting out that location since April, I believe, and been operating, I think, without incident from what we've heard.
Yeah, I haven't heard of any incidents either.
Great.
So thank you.
Sure.
Thank you so much for your question, Patricia. And if you think of another one, just go ahead and raise your hand again and I'll unmute you, okay?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, anybody else on the call with a question? Okay, we do have a couple folks that are on cell phones. So what I'm gonna do is go through and unmute those folks right now so that everybody has an opportunity to ask any questions. So there's a 657 number on the call. That's the area code. The last 2 digits is 63. I'm going to come to you and unmute you so that you have an opportunity to ask a question. Again, if you don't have one, we can move just right along. Hi, do you have a question?
Hi, it's Michelle Zadiba with County. I don't have a question, just listening in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to give a couple moments here for folks to raise their hands again. And then I'm going to come through and start to unmute folks just to make sure if we're having any technical issues, you have an opportunity. So Elizabeth, I'm going to come to you next and unmute you. Please let us know if you have a question. If not, we'll move on to the next person. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
I have no questions. Mine were answered already. Thank you.
Okay, thanks so much, Elizabeth. Okay. The next person I'm going to come to is Essie Kim. You should be able to unmute yourself now.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I'm doing one last pass through here. And I'm not seeing any additional questions. So Danielle, can you go ahead and tap through to the last slide for me?
Yes.
So as Danielle and Vicki mentioned, Jamboree prides itself on being a long-term owner and operator of all of our affordable and supportive housing communities, which means that we don't just do one community meeting and then refuse to talk to anyone ever again. So I want to make sure that everybody on this call has contact information for us. The best way to get a hold of us about this future community is outreach@jamboreehousing.com. I know that sounds like a dummy email, but I check it every single day. And if I don't check it, my colleague Kaylin checks it. So somebody will get back to you very quickly on any questions, concerns that you have. And then to keep apprised about next steps with the development and any future updates, the best way to do that is to go onto our website, jamboreehousing.com/motel conversions Stanton. That's where we'll be putting all of the information about the community updates there. So I'll leave this on the screen for a few moments here so you have an opportunity to write it down. But if there are no further questions, and I'm checking the chat one more time, checking the participant list one more time, that would conclude our first outreach meeting. I'll go ahead and leave the line open for another couple of minutes. Vicki and Danielle, if you don't mind staying on. But for everybody else, that concludes the Stanton Homekey Development virtual meeting. Thank you so much for attending and for your thoughtful questions. Okay, we've only got Jamboree staff on here now.